Folks, I got a couple of minutes before I hop in the shower and get ready for work. I kind of wanted to take this kind of a moment, if you will, to talk about something. Now, you pretty much have seen in some of my videos and all that some of my more recent collections have. Well, I'm not gonna. Well, I'll just come out and say it. I've been recently collecting a lot of the MLP stuff. Not as much as a lot of fans have, but just enough out there to basically say that if someday if I was going to, I would find a way to display them out there. I would be able to display them along my other figures. The only unfortunate thing about that, though, the only unfortunate thing about that is the fact that if I was to display them, not saying it would happen, but there is a very, very strong chance that, in a sense, I could get ridiculed by my siblings. You see, I'm sure they would understand that, okay, this is what Brian's doing, this is his life, he's a nostalgic person. I mean, if they look online, they look on YouTube and all that, they would see it. They would see that I'm not the only one out there. They would see people have stuff, have rooms, stuff, and basically have, that they too collect stuff, but they also have rooms dedicated to this stuff that they collect. So they would understand that. And it's true. But you see, like I said, I'm not afraid to come out here on the YT and display and show what I've got, what I have or what I'm getting or stuff like that. I mean, tomorrow, on my day off, I'm supposed to get a big package from Amazon.com with something that's going to add to that collection. And you'll see what that is when it comes in. But, here's the thing, though, that I think a lot of people seem not to really understand, and that is why. Why do people like me, whether we're the ultimate fan or not, whether we're a certain group of that fandom or not, why do we collect it? Why do we collect these things anyway? If we're made, even if even if we're not the ultimate fan or not a part of that fandom's community, that part of the fandom and that part of the fandom, if you know what I mean. Well, it's like I said before, and I'll say it again. It's for nostalgic reasons. You see, and the kids just got out of school. Some kids just got out of school. You see, for nostalgic reasons, there you go. But like I said, for nostalgic reasons, there's a lot of people like myself that collect figures like MLP FIM, like Transformers, like G.I. Joe, Gem, whatever you want to call it. If the figures and stuff are out there, we will collect them. And we collect them for nostalgic reasons. And that nostalgic reason is basically because of the fact that we grew up with that franchise. We may have not watched it or been a fan of it as much, but from a nostalgic standpoint, we grew up on it, so in a sense we want to collect something related to it. Even if that relation is based on the newer generation of that franchise, basically based on that new rebooted retcon portion of the franchise. You know, I have a lot of the Transformer figures. A lot of the Transformer figures that I have are based off some of the movies. You know, I do have some nostalgic ones. You know, I have the reissues, if you will, of the original Optimus Prime, the reissue of the original Ultra Magnus, of Hot Rod, you name it. I have them. I even have the original Perceptor minus the microscope part. But I have these figures, and you know, honestly I have a lot more of them than I do obviously of MLP. I have more of them obviously more than anything, you know, figurized of related to Sonic. You know, I have more of them figurized when it comes to Turtles. But still, a lot of what I have in there are either reissuings of the original run or the new generation portions, or even based on the live action film. So I do have it. I do have it. As far as Turtles go, you know, I do have the Turtle figures in the 2003 series. When I was a kid, I had some Turtle figures from the original series. And, you know, and yes, I do have some figures from the Nickelodeon series. Probably adding some more down the line if we still have some of the figures that I'm looking for. As well as I have all of the Ninja Turtle figures from the movie that came out last year. In fact, all of the figures I got from all four Turtles, the April O'Neil, Splinter, Shredder, and a Foot Soldier, I all got them on the first night they were released at my job. So I have those figures. So I have a lot of figures based on franchises that may not be related to the generation of that franchise that I grew up on. But at least it's a relation, it's an acknowledgement to that franchise. You know, when I so excuse me. So that's why, in a sense, people like me uh, collect figures. You know, why we collect current and try to collect past figures and stuff. It's because of nostalgic reasons. You know, again, the reason we collect the new generation sometimes is for nostalgic reasons because they're the closest we're going to get to the old generation. You know, do you see Hasbro reissuing a lot of the original MLPs? No, you don't. Do you see Hasbro reissuing Gem and the holograms? They might be doing so again because of the movie and now because of the comic, but we won't know until that time. Have we seen them reissue some of the original G.I. Joes back from the 60s and all that? We've seen that happen. We've seen them reissue that. Have we seen them reissue some of the G.I. Joe that we grew up on, that I grew up on in the 80s? Not really, but it might happen still. The fact is, though, whatever they do release and we do buy, we buy and collect for nostalgic reasons because that's the closest we're going to get to something that's related to the franchise we grew up on. You know, which is why when you see me show off, oh look, I got this MLP figure. It's not because I'm a fan of the show. Here's the thing: I have respect for the fact that this show's hitting the fifth season, or has gone, is now in its fifth season. I respect that. I respect the fact that it's now in its fifth season. So I respect that. I respect that it's in its fifth season. I respect the fact that it's going to get a movie based around possibly this current generation of MLP, and I respect the fact that it might continue on even after the movie. But I'm not a fan of it. I'm not that big of a fan of it. I'm somebody that might watch it on occasions, might watch clips here and there, and get a kick out of some of the things they see. But like I said, I'm not that big of a fan. I have respect for the franchise. I have respect for those that do support it, but I'm not that big of a fan. Just like those that may not be big fans of Transformers, but yet they may watch it on occasions. They might see clips here and there and get a kick out of them, but they have respect. They may not be that big of a fan, but they have respect. Same with Jem. You may not be a big of a fan or anything, but you can have respect for it. Things like that. So, it's in those kind of categories. But just because you're not that big of a fan doesn't mean you can't collect something based off that franchise because you grew up on it. You can. There's a lot of people that if you go on YouTube, you Google, you will see when they give out room tours or point out what they have, they will show you here on this side is some of my Hasbro figures, and as you can see, I have Transformers, I have G.I. Joe, I have My Little Pony, I have someone Jem, maybe even Inhumanoids if they have it. And they go, well, like, then on the other side, here's all my Marvel figures. So here's all my superhero, Marvel and DC figures. And over here, here's all my video game stuff. And blah, 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 blah. You see, they could do that. And nobody would really say anything. But then again, you always grow up with that mentality that certain shows and franchises are meant for a certain gender. And you can understand that. I grew up with the mentality that Transformers, G.I. Joe, Turtles and all that was for my gender. And that My Little Pony, Jem, whatever girl show out there was for the little girls. But here's what's crazy about it. In the past decade, that's been thrown in the past decade or so, if not the past 20-something years. Heck, you add RC, adding RC into the mix back in '86, in the past almost 30 years, in the past 30 to 20 years, mostly maybe now 20 years and all that, and if not the past decade, that's been thrown all out the window, because now it doesn't matter what gender you are, you could be a fan of both. You could be a fan of Transformers and a fan of My Little Pony if you feel like it. Heck, you could, like me, you could be someone that's a fan of Transformers and have respect for something like My Little Pony because you grew up on the franchise. You may have not watched it much as a kid, but you can say, hey, I grew up on it enough to where maybe I'll collect the figures here and there just to say, hey, this was out of respect for the fact that this was part of my franchise. And yes, at times I did watch the original show. So you would collect it out of respect. And there's a difference between collecting out of respect and collecting, out of being a pure fan. Being a pure fan, you collect those figures and stuff a lot more than you collect the figures and stuff of the show or the franchise you respect. Like I mentioned earlier, I have more Transformers than I do MLPs. I have more Transformers than I do the Turtles or even any kind of Sonic figure. And I'm a huge fan of Turtles. I'm a huge fan of Sonic. But I grew up on Transformers, and that is the franchise that I'm the biggest fan of. It's true. So, which is why if you take a look at all my figures and everything, you'll notice it's nothing but Transformers. And that's a fact. But I have other ways of showing that I'm a massive fan of the other shows and franchises. Like with Sonic, I'm basically subscription-wise, I'm at my 200th issue in as a subscriber, going on 272 soon, and that's saying something. And I've been reading the comics since it almost began. You know, total-wise, I still have figures from the 2003 series. So, the original 4 Turtles of the 2003 series, as well as a lot of the Archie Comics Ninja Turtle comics. I have those, but they are nothing. But even though I have those, you know, the only one that's on equal par to what I have with Transformers is the comic book collecting I've had